All right, good afternoon. It's afternoon here in the Pacific Northwest. I'm not sure where you're watching from, but hello, wherever you are. Welcome to our weekly interview series for the Kareem Kandi World Orchestra. For those, if this is your first time, my name's Kareem Kandi, behind the fogged up glasses. This is our very special guest, master drummer and percussionist and composer and all-around general nice guy. If you know him, this is Jeff Busch. Jeff, thank you for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure. I'm really happy to be here, Kareem. It's nice to actually... be in the presence of someone outside of my own space. Things are starting to open up, and that's a good feeling.
Yeah, no, I'm happy about that too. And we've been doing this series now for about a year. I don't know how many episodes we've done. We've done a lot, and I've been trying to have you as a guest for quite some time, and you were unable to do so just because of safety reasons and everything else. But now we're so thankful that you're here and glad that you could be with us today to share your experiences. And you start.
Well, I would have to say my mom was a real strong influence. She just exposed me to some concerts at a young age. You know, when I was in junior high, well, actually even in elementary school, we used to listen to records, Motown records, Earth, Wind and Fire, Stevie Wonder, Louis Armstrong, and also my cousins, David and Diane Schuer, who are a little bit older than me, were both real influential people. But my mom actually had perfect pitch as a kid. She was in kindergarten, tested by a local music teacher and sent home with a little pin on her jacket saying, sign your daughter up for piano lessons. And I know her parents couldn't afford to do that at the time, but she played when we were growing up just by ear, and so I was around music. And then my cousins were musical, and I was actually, fortunate to have a great drum teacher in third grade, John Warden, up in Bellingham, who kind of took me under his wing and invited me over for some lessons. He would play the piano, and he'd try to teach me how to read music, and I remember I'd get distracted because his mother, who was 103, would sit in the rocking chair to the right of the piano. She'd never speak, but she'd just rock, and I'd start reading my music. But in third grade, I kept thinking, I've never seen anyone who's 103, and I'd just stray over, and I'd look at her, and then before I know it, I'd kind of be lost. But it was a fun experience, and he was very encouraging, and I played a lot by ear. I got a snare drum when I was a kid, and eventually got a hi-hat, and I just kind of sang and played the drums, and then there were a couple of guys in my neighborhood. We formed a little trio that played at our elementary school talent show, which was pretty funny. So it all kind of started in third grade. I did play a little bit. I played in the junior high band. In high school, unfortunately, after my freshman year in the jazz band, they only took 2 drummers, and me and 2 of my best friends were drummers. So the music kind of began to take on a competitive edge. And personally, I think one of the best approaches as a teacher is to try and find ways, particularly as a member of a rhythm section where there are so many styles of music where you can have multiple percussionists, including people who want to be a part of something is a great thing.
Well, a couple things. Number one, you covered this. So I want to make sure I understand. So you grew up in Bellingham, Washington?
Mostly in Bellingham, yeah. I lived in Auburn for a while, but I spent most of my elementary through first year of college in Bellingham.
Okay, that would explain your sweet disposition. You're one of the nicest, happiest musicians I know. I've never seen you get angry. I'm sure it happens, but I've never seen it. So, but that's kind of seems to be hand in hand with people from Bellingham. I might be overstating, but a lot of people from Bellingham are pretty nice for the most part. Well, the other thing you mentioned is, when you talk about competition in music, particularly when you get in school, and if you're in a jazz band, band, there's only one person that can play the drum set, or maybe in like the wind ensemble they have a percussion, multiple stations for people to play. But I think what a lot of people don't really understand is prior to the drum set was an extension of a drum line where you had one person playing the bass drum, another person playing the snare, another person playing cymbals. So I mean, there is ways to incorporate multiple drummers into a musical situation. I mean, I think it just depends on the instructor and how creative they want to get. Would you say that's a fair assumption?
Yeah, and one of the things that I really love about the musical experiences I've had in New Orleans, in Mexico, in Brazil, and Peru, observing in Nicaragua, some of the places I've traveled in Puerto Rico, is the fact that being a musician also encompasses singing, dancing, and playing percussion. It's not uncommon for you to find Brazilian singers or people from any of these different countries that often play multiple instruments or are comfortable dancing the dance, singing a song, trying to sort of embody the music. And I know sometimes here we tend to put people in boxes, that you're a sax player, you're a trumpeter, but this music that we play, comes from a form of expression that includes dance accompaniment, song, drumming, dancing, and singing, or an ensemble with dancing and singing is a very complete art form. And so it's important, I think, to encourage people to understand that about our roots and to continue to express in those ways. I often tell students, you don't have your instrument here. You've got an idea. Convey that idea so that I feel the groove and I understand the melody, and be the music, as opposed to relying on, other ways of relating. And some people have an aptitude for that, and some don't. But it's a great thing to try and cultivate. I remember listening to a guy in Pioneer Square when I first came to town, and I was walking and I heard this music from many blocks away, and he was a gospel singer, soul singer, and he was just playing a big gulp plastic cup full of change. But, from 3 blocks away, it sounded like a drummer with great rhythm and a great voice. And I got there, and it was like this one guy making all this music with no instrument except his voice and his change. And it was, that was a great example of what it is to be a musician.
Definitely. Well, I want to steer a little bit. You mentioned your cousin and how much your cousins and how much they were an influence on you. Now, I'm curious. Your cousin Diane, sure, wonderful Grammy-winning vocalist. You knew her before she was at that spot in her career. So, growing up, how was she an influence on you? Would you have like family get-togethers and you guys would just play music, or what was she like prior to becoming a well-known, well-respected artist?
Well,
she was from Tacoma, Washington, wasn't she?
Yeah, I knew Diane when I lived in Auburn, and I was much younger. She was probably, I want to say, maybe 15 years older than me, and I do have some great memories of both her and her brother, who were, born slightly premature and put in these oxygen, or in these little incubators to try and help them in their prematurity. The oxygen mixes were faulty, and so my cousin David lost his hearing to a certain degree, and Diane lost her sight. I think that might have also happened to Stevie Wonder. I'm not sure if that's how he lost his sight, but so she did see when she was born, but shortly thereafter, because of this, lost her sight. But I do have memories of her. I remember her, I think, singing Roberta Flack songs, and I know she was also influenced by a lot of other great singers, Sarah Vaughan and Ella Fitzgerald and David, played the drums. And of course, when I was a kid and I went over to his house, I really was excited by the fact that you could move all of your limbs and sing a song if you wanted to and make music. So that was something that just kind of stuck with me. And over the years, I would say I kind of, after my freshman year of high school, I kind of just played for fun. I wasn't in the school band. I played in some bands, but just kind of played for fun. And then in college, I actually went to art college in England, in the UK, and I shipped my drums over, and I started playing in bands there and playing for dance classes as an accompanist. And so music kind of became my side gig, and I started playing in more and more ensembles, and there was a music college just down the street. So after I graduated from the art college, I went there for a year, and I played percussion with a really great band led by the drummer and the bass player, and they had just memorized all these great weather report tunes. So we had this band called Whether or Not. And John Whitfield and John Bartkey were two great musicians that kind of really helped mentor me as a young, aspiring percussionist drummer. And, it just kind of happened. It wasn't like I was like I set out in high school or in junior high, I'm going to be a drummer or this. It just kind of unfolded, which I'm very thankful for.
So here, many people that know you in the musician circles, everyone knows that you're like a specialist in terms of particularly like Latin drumming and Latin percussion and just knowing how to play those different styles, because those are worlds in and of themselves. So when did that kind of take hold, and when did you decide to really study that deeply? Because clearly you have.
Well, when I was actually living in Leeds, England, I got exposure to some Brazilians who were exchange students, and there was also a group predominantly English percussionists who formed this band called Chocante, which was a Brazilian band, all percussion band. And when I heard the sound of that, it was a really beautiful, powerful thing. And so I joined that band and started learning more about some of the different instruments, some of the different rhythms. And I was also really influenced by the music of Ayrton Moreira, who was a great drummer from Brazil who came to the States and played with a lot of different people, played with Miles Davis, formed his own band as well with his partner Flora Purim. And Ayrton really incorporated a lot of other sounds in addition to the drum set, which I listened to, and he was a real groove master. And his records just sounded so organic and alive. And so when I was learning to play samba, I remember a particular song he wrote called Samba de Flora with Giovanni Hidalgo, the great Puerto Rican percussionist, and a few others from, I think, Argentina, a pianist from Argentina, and another guy named Mike Shapiro, who's a great drummer and bass player from the Bay Area. But I played to this song every day for a year, trying to sort of train my limbs to do that. And eventually, after my work visa, I stayed in England about 8 years. And after my work visa, I went to Brazil and lived there for about 6 months, and then returned again with Jovino, who I met in Seattle, for another month.
You're talking, for those that don't know, you're talking about Jovino Santos Neto, the great composer and educator and pianist.
Yeah, he's been a real great mentor and inspiration when it comes to Brazilian music, Brazilian jazz, and just sort of thinking outside the box. He studied with Hermeto Pascoal, who's kind of like, in my opinion, he's kind of like an artist in the musical world, like Picasso. He can play and compose things that are beautiful and more standard, and he can also think outside the box and play a variety of instruments and incorporate the sounds of nature, of industrial machinery, of language, of animals. He kind of breaks a lot of barriers and is a very creative, expressive composer. He wrote a book. He wrote one book. I think it's called The Birthday Book, where he wrote a song a day. And he has this ability, Hermeto, to, just sit down and compose on the fly. And I think that rubbed off on Jovino too. And so it's been kind of exciting to be around him, and that sort of continual well of creativity. But I also just love straight ahead jazz. And when I first came to Seattle, I had a skill set that was unique because of my experiences living in Brazil. But, I really think that more and more as we get exposed to music from different parts of the world, and people can see each other on the internet, people can travel much easier, that we're discovering all these ways that our musical worlds are related, and so jazz and Caribbean music and West African music, and there's just so many connections that are there to be made.
Well, I would say too, there's many bands that say, well, we play Latin music, that people get offended at because that means so many different things. There's so many different avenues that Latin music means, and they play it might be like a watered down version, which is not really awesome. And then you hear someone that's really studied and learned how to play it, and the sound and the feel and all of that makes worlds and worlds of difference. And when I hear you play something in one of those veins, it's the rhythm right away, and the sound is what grabs hold. And like, oh, that feels great, versus someone who hasn't. So any tips for people that are trying to learn how to play Brazilian music better or Afro-Cuban music better? Any directions where you would steer them? Listen to this person, study this, practice this. Any thoughts that you've gone through this process? So.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was being in a country and just sort of listening to it and watching people and taking lessons with people. Sometimes I'd be standing at a bus stop, and somebody would come up. A guy came up to me on his bicycle. Another guy who was there happened to be, a pandero player, the Brazilian tambourine. And sometimes just strangers would come up and show me things. Music was a real fabric, a synonymous part of the culture there. So if you have a chance to go somewhere and experience studying in a country, and finding a teacher or multiple teachers, that's a great thing. And aside from that, just listening to music that really resonates with you, or finding artists. There's just so many amazing artists out there. One of the things I realized when I was in Brazil, I'm like, I'm in the southern hemisphere of the earth, and there are so many more musicians here than in the northern hemisphere, is what I felt like, just because there's a different sort of community aspect that comes into play. I don't know that for a fact, but it felt like people just participate in music and dancing and singing as a pastime, in a way that we don't. I just remember after work going to places with my friend that might be like a restaurant, an open-air restaurant where there was music several nights of the week, and it wasn't even necessarily a gig. It was a hang, where people just came together to play. And when they saw that I was interested in their music and had studied it to some degree, they really welcomed me in and showed me a lot of things. And so that was a very powerful experience, and I'm due to go back.
Soon, hopefully soon. All right, well, I would like to go back in time. I mean, this interview is going to jump around. They always seem to do, no matter how much I try and plan ahead. And I've already forgotten one of the big things. To all of our listeners, I'm going to interview Jeff here for probably another 25 minutes or so, and then open things up for questions. So if you have any questions for myself or Jeff, let us know. You can put them in the comments now if you're thinking of questions as we're doing this here. So, but feel free to put them in the comments, and then we'll get to things as we can here. So, but I want to go back to your formative years. So when you started becoming interested in music and in particular jazz, who were some drummers that you kind of gravitated towards in terms of like, you know, more of like straight ahead jazz?
Well, when I was, I would say one of the drummers that kind of captivated me when I was younger was O.C. Johnson, and O.C. Johnson was a session drummer. I think he lived in New York City, and I first heard him on a Lionel Hampton record, and it was just one of those records. It's like, you know, this guy is not famous in the way that some drummers are, but you could put the needle down anywhere on the record on either side, and it was just like beautiful, just swinging, you know. So I loved O.C. Johnson. I also just learned about Danny Barcelona, who I listened to on Louis Armstrong recordings, who was a Filipino-American from Hawaii, but you never hear his name. But you listen to those records, and it's like, man, that's as swinging as it gets. And I also listened to, you know, Baby Dodds and Billy Higgins and Tony Williams and Buddy Rich and, you know, there's just Danny Richmond. There's just, I try and look at drummers. I mean, we all have people we resonate with and who are our favorites, but I try and look at people even who play in a style that is completely different from how I would play, but still kind of try and like sort of celebrate what they do, because there's just so many different ways of expressing. And probably my favorite drummer right now is Roy Haynes. And one of the reasons I like Roy Haynes is just his unconventionality. You know, recently after Chick Corea's death, I was listening to his 1966 trio recording with Miroslav Vitus on bass and Roy, and watching some videos of them at the White House, playing some free jazz, playing some monk. But then I read an interview with Roy, you know, and one of the things that struck me was, you know, the interviewer asking him about some of his influences, and he named Max Roach, another person I loved, and Philly Joe Jones, another drummer I love. But Roy, when asked about, you know, how he played and how he studied, you know, the guy said, well, what rudiments do you play? And Roy just kind of said, you know, I don't really play the rudiments. He says, my hands aren't even, you know, and I don't think that way. And that really kind of struck me, because as musicians, we learn fundamentals, and there are so many different ways to express, and obviously having certain fundamentals and technique is important, but it's not the most important thing. And I think what Roy really demonstrates is that he is on the highest level expressing who he is and what he is. And those kinds of rudiments didn't really resonate with him. Not that he can't do some of them, but he's like, my hands don't work that way. My hands aren't even. But what he does is so musical and expressive and distinct. You know, that's the thing that's beautiful about it. And so it was very inspiring just in the last few months to sort of come across a guy who's still playing in his 90s, who's played with so many greats, and to hear him say that, you know, it was kind of reaffirming, because it's very easy to get competitive and compare ourselves to other people. And I think really music is about like celebrating other people and being true to yourself and expressing what it is and who you are.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. And speaking of rudiments and education, you've had a hand in working with a lot of different programs over your time in Seattle, at least since I've known you. In fact, I think the first times that I met you in person, you were teaching the Latin ensemble because Jovino was out of town doing a tour or something, and you were subbing and doing a lot of classes. I'm curious, you're a little bit older than me. How old are you?
I'm 54.
54, okay. 10 years or so, 12 years. I'm curious about your thoughts about someone like from the school of Roy Haynes, who was around since almost the beginning of jazz, and they didn't have a lot of these jazz institutions and schools in way of teaching, and it was more just on the bandstand or from asking other musicians or from sessions, versus now we have the internet. There's 1,000,001 different ways that you can find to learn how to do technique, or you can study with anybody or go to a prestigious jazz school that teaches all these things. What are your thoughts on jazz education now and its negatives and positives versus perhaps back, in the early 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, somewhere around there?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to learn, and some of the greatest players just grew up in an environment where maybe they were interacting with elders, who were mentoring them. And some people go to school. Some people do both. I think it's important to just kind of find a path that resonates with you, and if there's a teacher that you really love or admire and want to work with, or multiple teachers, there are a lot of different ways to do it, depending on whether or not you want to be a certified teacher, which a lot of players do in addition to performing. That's a great thing. So we're blessed in the Pacific Northwest to have some great programs, youth programs and adult programs, and a lot of wonderful teachers. And trying to immerse yourself or put yourself in situations with people who are older or more experienced or more specialized in a given area is always a good thing. I've had that experience playing in some of the Cuban bands in Seattle, where I'm the guy who's really learning the most, in the sense that I don't have a background in this kind of music. So I've been able to hang out with Carlos Cascante and Julio Jauregui and Edson Otero and Junior Medina. These are people from Mexico, Costa Rica, Peru, Puerto Rico. Pedro Vargas, who's from Cuba, another person that I've worked with. Samuel Alamillo is a friend of mine from with Mexican heritage. And so a lot of these people who've grown up listening to this music have been really helping me along the way. And so it's combinations of things. It's a never-ending journey, to study with people and figure out what it is, that strengths that people have, and learn from them, and asking questions. That's something I need to be better about. It's just like, how do you do that? And can you show me that? And it's important to talk to people, talk to people that you respect, and your parents and your friends and teachers, and try and figure out what path resonates with you, and mostly it's important to be in an environment where you feel like, I think finding that balance of working hard, but having a good time doing it and really enjoying learning is an important thing. And for some people that might not be right away in high school or out of high school. I met one guy whose parents made him play piano as a kid, and then he took on a corporate gig, but later on really rediscovered how much he he loved music and piano, and rediscovered it. So, sorry, I'm kind of waffling.
I think a lot of people, they love music, they just don't like the lifestyle and what that can or cannot entail. To be a full-time musician in the trenches doing it can be a lot of work, and I've seen a lot of that too, where people maybe do a day job or something in tech to make a lot of money, and then later go back in and do the music thing. And there's no right or wrong way to go about it, but yeah, certainly I think living that lifestyle and being around and associating yourself with musicians and learning and asking a lot of questions as much as possible is very, very important, no matter what stage of the game you're in, to try and get better at doing it. I think also you mentioned community and sessions and things of that nature. In Seattle, we've talked about quite a bit about the one at the session at the Owl and Thistle, which has been going on for 20-some years. But there was also a very influential session for many, many years. Currently, it had to stop because of all the stuff that was going on. But the one at the Capitol Cider that was hosted by yourself and Eric Verlindi. I think Julio at one point was involved as well, Dean Schmidt and Adriana Giordano. Can you talk a little bit about that session and how it came about and just the history of it thus far?
Yeah, that session is a very popular, beautiful night. It's a great venue with, kind of the right combination of location. They have great food and great staff there, and we just tried to create a musical hang that could be for jazz players, but it could be for any musician who wanted to express. And for many years, I was lucky enough to play drums at First African Methodist Episcopal Church up on 14th and Pine, and that was a really influential experience for me, watching choirs who were preschool to maybe fifth grade, young adult choirs, middle-aged choirs, elder choirs. They had a lot of different choirs, all performing with a live house band. But I saw how young kids learned to speak in front of an audience, learned to maybe solo for the first time. But the other thing I noticed that was really beautiful was the sort of inclusivity of the experience. In many of these choirs, there were just tremendous singers and musicians. People you'd sworn you'd heard on a Motown cut, But sometimes there would be someone in the choir who would be encouraged to sing a solo who really couldn't carry a tune too well. But the community treated that person with love, and they sort of encouraged them. And that's an important thing that we need to remember. A lot of people in our communities maybe aren't professional musicians, but music is like a community thing that we've sort of lost touch of. For a lot of people, they don't have opportunities to play with other people. Maybe they'll sing some songs at a holiday or a birthday, but not everyone has time to be part of an ensemble at a jazz school or jazz workshop. And so the philosophy at the Cider Bar was really to try and create a versatile house band that could play straight-ahead jazz or funk or blues or Afro-Cuban music or Afro-Brazilian music. But if someone wanted to come in and sing a country tune, or someone wanted to come up and do flamenco or play an East Indian song, the goal was to try and accommodate that person. Maybe they'd perform solo, maybe they'd perform with the house band. And it was kind of, I really tried to encourage people to just, be welcoming. Those people in the audience were our biggest fans, and it was an opportunity for us to showcase what we do, but also to open it up to different singers and musicians to come and do their thing. So that was kind of the idea behind it, that we all need music, and not everybody's necessarily that good at music, but the idea was to create an environment to try and make that person sound as good as they can, and sometimes it's a fine line. Sometimes you get, like, we'd have this list of people who'd sign up, and it was very popular. A lot of people would come and sign up. Sometimes you get a really great musician in the house. It's a juggling act to try and create something that's entertaining for the audience, and also give people a chance to come up when they want to. Sometimes we'd get people who'd sign up early, and they wouldn't necessarily come up right at that time, but it was a balancing act for me as a host to try and encourage people, and at the same time balance the night's entertainment with people who are, like sometimes you might come in or someone else who's like, I recognize that person. They're a really great musician. The house is full. I'm going to invite you up now. You're going to cut the line and perform, or maybe you're going to join the next person who's up here singing. And so it's just trying to make it work for the people who want to perform, but also the people who are there to listen. And basically it's about trying to have a good time and encourage people and form. The cool thing about the cider bar that I really liked was just the variety of people, the variety of ethnic groups, and the variety of ages, But the one thing that I really think that I'd like to do or like to see more of, and it's one of the things that you've done, is include jam sessions where young people who aren't 21 yet can come and jam with elders, because as Victor Wooten says, it's a language. And when you're not able to go into a venue because of, the liquor license or the liquor laws, the age restrictions, it's a real, we're really missing an opportunity to like interact with young people and share and learn, through that experience.
Well, no, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. But I would also say kind of a testament to the atmosphere that you guys created at Capital Cider. A lot of times with the jazz jam sessions, there is that sense of competitiveness, or, oh, that person's not good. It doesn't sound like the album, or that person hasn't studied. There is, and you can. That's a palpable thing. You can sense it, but you don't really feel that, or you didn't really feel that at Capital Cider because of the nature of the people on the stage fostering that inclusive environment. But also you could see that too in the audience, because it was always packed. It was a Monday night and it was always busy, just packed. And today, of course, it would certainly fall outside of the guidelines of social distancing, but it was full all the time because people knew that it was fun. There was all these different styles of music that were represented, but two, it was also an inclusive, more of a festive kind of environment, as opposed to a scrutiny. This person doesn't know this song, or you're playing the wrong chord changes, or things of that nature, which unfortunately kind of gets to be part of the thing with jazz jam sessions.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great jazz players who also realize who are really great mentors and teachers, and I just view it as an opportunity. If there's someone who comes in who still is a complete beginner, or has a lot of work to do, it's an opportunity for them to form alliances with other older players who could be like, hey man, let's hang, or why don't you come and spend an afternoon and I'll show you this or show you that, or it's a chance to like build a community. And I think it's great when older, more experienced players can be like, I'm not above these people. I'm going to play with them, try and make them sound as good as I can. And sometimes, it's frustrating. It can be frustrating, but at the end of the day, there's way more fun experiences to be had and friendships to be formed, and for teacher-student relationships to be formed. So that's kind of the way I view it.
One Seattle musician who I know is not just my story with him is unique, but he's had this situation with lots of other folks, is the great Jay Thomas. I remember I had hired him. This was like late 90s. I hired him to do a concert, and we played together. And after the concert, he's like basically telling me, oh, he didn't like my sound. And he wasn't like mean about it, but he was just saying, well, why don't you come by my house and I'll give you lessons. And he gave me probably like a couple of years of lessons just completely for free, just to hang out and talk about music. And, I couldn't be more grateful to him for that. But that's exactly just the situation like what you're discussing. And I think there are many musicians, luckily, that I think both of us that have had the pleasure of, being around in that sphere of influence. And it is important. But I think, that you do see a lot of those things in the jam sessions. I guess what I was speaking to more of is just the climate that was created and fostered at Capital Cider versus other jam sessions throughout the city in the Northwest.
Yeah, the thing at Capital Cider is it's not just jazz. so sometimes we'll have a folk singer come up there. We've had yodelers come up there. We've had tabla players. We've had harp players from all different parts of the world. And sometimes it can be really tough, and other times it can be completely magical. These new combinations of sounds. And so I try and approach it with that spirit. Just keep an open mind. Basically, I like good music. And I love jazz. I love a lot of things. Sometimes we'll get soul singers in there, or sometimes we'll get a gospel singer, or sometimes we'll get an opera singer, and so, yeah, it's cool to sort of celebrate people's skill sets and but the Owl's another great hang for players who really want to go and just hang and play a jazz repertoire, and I love that too, and sometimes you'll see some crossover with some of the Brazilian or Cuban jazz, and probably other things too, but they're they both have a lot going for them in their own ways, So I love both those sessions.
Most definitely. Do you know? I mean, I know obviously we're sort of kind of coming out of sheltering in place, and some venues are doing music, like the venue we're in right now here in Tacoma McMenamins. But do you know? Does Capital Cider have any plans of restarting the session as things open up, or is it too soon to tell at this point?
I haven't talked to the staff recently. I did talk to Julio, and he said, after the second vaccine, I think we should just show up there and start playing. The thing about it is it is in a basement, so the ventilation and so forth is definitely something that needs to be kind of cleared. But I would imagine, or I'm hopeful that soon things will improve enough where we could start playing again. And I'm just going to be patient right now and hopefully have some contact with the staff there in the coming month or so.
Well, as I said, I'm just glad you're here today. So we've been working on this for a while.
Yeah, I really appreciate you inviting me. It's great.
Well, we're at that point in the interview, getting close to that time here. Does anybody have any questions for Jeff or myself at this time? If so, feel free to put them in the comments, and we'll do our best to get to them if we can. If not, I'm just going to keep barraging him with questions here. So, are there any questions? No questions yet. Okay, I'm curious, when you got back to Seattle and were active on the scene and out on the scene playing, we're blessed, as you know, to have many wonderful drummers here in the Pacific Northwest. Are there any whom you've checked out that you really enjoy, or who are some drummers here in the Northwest that you really admire their playing and what they're doing and what they're up to?
Oh, there's just so many great players. I've studied with a few different people. I've studied with Jose Martinez and John Bishop a little bit, and I've learned a lot playing alongside Devon Lewis in Marina Albero's band, playing percussion, and I've learned a lot from Mark Ivester in Jovino's band. Mark's really he's really a consummate player and a fantastic adaptable musician who can read like nobody's business. And it's really inspiring to be around people like that. Chon Diop, who's a great Senegalese master drummer. He's a hand drummer. There's another young guy named Teo Shantz who isn't so active on the scene, but he's a phenomenal percussionist and drummer. And then there's people in the Afro-Cuban community, Edson Otero and Junior Medina and Pedro Vargas and Stuart Vasquez and Sam Alamillo. I've learned from these different people. I've enjoyed meeting and hearing Stefan Shantz and Xavier Lecoutier. His playing and his composing is just so inspirational. Tarek, I love listening to Tarek. And so there's a lot of different people. I'm sure I'm missing a few as well, but there's also some really tremendous gospel drummers. And sadly, a lot of the jazz worlds or jazz players don't necessarily always cross over and interact with the gospel players. But during that time playing at the AME church, I saw some really tremendous gospel drummers. So I know Heather and Morgan are also two young female drummers on the scene who are doing great things, and Davey over there at the other jam session at the one in Fremont.
So you're talking about Heather Thomas on drums and Morgan. I'm spaced on her last name, but from Mojams.
From Mojams. Morgan Gillickson, I think.
Yep, Gillickson, and then also Davey Nefos.
Yeah. So I've not seen them for a little while, but we've crossed paths at different times and hung out, and I'm just I'm happy there's things going on, and there's a lot of people who play inspiring music around the city.
We're very lucky. You're very lucky because you live in Seattle. There's always something going on in Seattle one way or the other. Tacoma, it does have stuff, but there's not the same amount of musicians, and there's not the same amount of clubs, unfortunately. Maybe someday that'll change, and I hope it does, but we're close enough where we get to benefit from that scene as well, which is great. Same thing is true of Olympia and Bellingham. We're very lucky to have such great cities with great music scenes nearby.
Also wanted to say Max Holmberg, who plays with the 200 Trio, is a really inspirational young player that I've enjoyed listening to, and of course he plays with Greg, who you play with a lot on bass. So there's just so many inspiring young people coming up, and it's fun to be part of the community and be inspired by their tremendous playing.
Definitely. It looks like we have a question. Yeah. Okay, the question is, Jeff, you showed me I'm going to probably mispronounce this, Kabula, when you taught me a lesson in the crib here. This is from Michael Smolker. I think I sort of get it, but if you would show us that as a hand clap. I still have your notation of that above my setup. And it's funny you mentioned this, Michael. Hello, Michael. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you again sooner than later. But I just was talking to Jeff about doing something similar to this before we broadcast, so I'm glad you're asking about this. Thank you. So do you know what he's talking about?
Yeah. Kabula is a rhythm that I learned from a master drummer named Jorge Alabe from Brazil, and it's kind of a predecessor to samba. And there's 3 drum parts and a bell part. The bell part went 1, 2, 1, 2. Dot 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 dot, and the hand drum part went. The low drum, the highest drum played 1, 2, 1, 2. Dot 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 dot, and the middle drum played 1, 2, 1, 2. Guduga, 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 gudu. And the low drum played 1, 2, 1, 2. Ba ba boom boom 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 boom. So those are like 3 parts that would be played on 3 different drums, with a bell accompanist. And Schmolke, we'll have to get together and play that.
Well, it's funny because I remember going back to the Capital Cider thing. Well, a point I want to make for people watching that are musicians or students or whatever is, regardless of what instrument you play, and Jeff just kind of demonstrated this, you should be able to keep time and sing the part, because the music does not, your instruments are just inanimate objects. They don't do anything. The music is coming from you, and you should be able to keep time and sing Even we're not going. It doesn't need to be perfection. We're not trying to sing at Carnegie Hall, but sing your part, whatever it is you're trying to do, and keep time. I think that is very, very, very important. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's a great thing to try and do. Try and learn to snap your finger and make it swing, and also just counting songs in. That's a really great skill to develop, you know. And one of the things, a very basic thing, is as a young jazz player or singer or composer or arranger, you know, generally if it's a swing tune, I'll count on the 2 and 4. I'll snap on the 2 and 4. 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll sing it a dum ba dum ba dum da dum a dum da ba da. So it's got that vocabulary is delivered when I'm counting it in, and that gives the feeling of the swing and the rhythm to the band. So even in a very short time, a 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're in. Whereas if it's a straight tempo, maybe if it's a bossa nova, I might clap 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm clapping or snapping on the downbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. If it's a samba, maybe an up samba, I might go like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Cha 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 cha. Something like that. So those kinds of skills are really helpful. And learning about rhythms, I kind of think about rhythms like foundations to a house, you know, and I've got this bag with these different kinds of foundations. There's a swing foundation, there's a ballad foundation, a shuffle, a cha-cha-cha, a bossa nova, a samba, a cabula. You know, there's a lot of different rhythms. And so the more you can internalize those rhythms or actually play them, and we all have, I mean, one of the things that's challenging about America is it is such a melting pot. And as musicians exposed to such a wide range of cultures and styles, we are trying to learn more about different kinds of music that some people just specialize in. You know, there's people that just play a very limited style of music really well, and so that's something to also recognize that you take what you can. I mean, I remember listening to Bobby Durham play drums with Oscar Peterson, and he would swing on some of the bossa nova tunes, and it wasn't that it wasn't wrong, it still swung. It wasn't like how a Brazilian drummer would play it, but it was still beautiful and swinging. So, you know, you take what you can and you just try and make music.
Do we have another question? We do. So the question is, where did your famous catchphrase "keep swinging" come from, and where did it start? Which is funny because I've heard a lot of people say that, but you do say that a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just always, I don't know exactly when I started saying that, but I just, you know, to me, swing is like, it's like a way of living. It's like, you know, trying to do your best, trying to relax and do your best, trying to swing, trying to make the people around you want to dance, want to swing too, want to participate, you know. So it's kind of an encouraging phrase that obviously comes from jazz, comes from playing jazz and drumming, but it's really just kind of like, you know, a way of living life, I think. And so I just say it as kind of an encouraging phrase.
Swinging feels good, and it feels good to feel good.
Yeah. Have a good time and keep swinging.
Well, is there another question? Oh, now the question. Now we got 5 minutes left. All the questions are going to come. Sure. Okay. Yeah. So the question is, where did the 4-bar break come from, the one that you and Ernesto threw into Afro-Cuban tunes?
Well, that could have been a break from a great Afro-Cuban ensemble called Los Muñequitos de Matanzas. And they play a lot of beautiful folkloric music. And the break that I think they're thinking of is common in a lot of percussion circles, and so sometimes on the bandstand at Capitol Cider or wherever we were, we would play this rhythm or this phrase at the end of the song. So maybe we were having a jam on a rhythm, and at the very end we'd play 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Da 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 boom ga da cha. So that phrase was influenced by the great Los Muñequitos from Cuba, and there are different breaks that you hear from Brazilian music, from West African music, and just like you hear in jazz too, there's certain endings, there's certain phrases and vocabulary, and so I think that's probably the one that they're referring to. 1, 2, 3. I'll do it a little slower. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ba ba da ba 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 da ba ba da ba ba da ba ba boom ba da cha. I think that's it.
Very cool. Speaking of that's it. Okay, good. You got it. Well, speaking of the hang at Capitol Cider and the transfer of information between musicians, I remember I was up playing as the guest one night, and we were talking about Brazilian music and feel and your study of it, and you wrote out, you painstakingly by hand wrote out these beautiful, and I still have it at home, these ways of playing bossa nova and samba, and you were talking about the secret to make that feel good. And I asked you prior to the interview today if you could talk about that a little bit. Is that something you can go into?
Yeah, I think the thing that makes Brazilian music and a lot of different styles of music, I've also experienced this playing a lot with Marina Albedo, is just the world of 16th notes, da ba 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 da ba, and triplets, da 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 da, and how those two rhythms can coexist within a song or within a rhythm within your vocabulary. And so it can feel like an expansion and contraction that happens in samba music. And so there's two rhythms that kind of outline this expansion and contraction. And I learned it playing the tamborim, which is a small drum that you see played sometimes in the samba schools. Well, they're always played in the samba schools. Sometimes you'll see them played with just a finger in bossa nova. But there's a rhythm that Jovino taught me called the fork, and it's a 16th note tied to an 8th note tied to a 16th note. So it sounds like 1, 2, 1, 2, da 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 da. And then so that's the 16th note representation. And then if I play a triplet, it sounds like 1, 2, 1, 2, da 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 da. And then when you play both of those with an offbeat, it sounds like sure. Yeah, so the fork is this 1, 2, 1, 2, da 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 da. The triplet 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So being able to do that is kind of what I think is the secret of the samba swing, and a great way to practice it is to play 3 against 2. So to play together, right, left, together, right, left, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, doom, high, low, the surdo, boom, doom, 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 doom. And so that is a great way of sort of 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 3 against 2, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So now I'm my left hand, instead of going 1 and 2 and I'm just going and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and boom, 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 boom. Ta 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 ta. And so as a samba player, or as part of the samba vocabulary and Brazilian music vocabulary, and you know, this has roots in West Africa. There's kind of a very subtle influence that you can have on the groove of the music, depending on how much you lean toward the 16th note phrasing, taka 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 taka, or how much you lean toward the triplet phrasing, ta 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 ta, which kind of stretches it. And so that awareness enables you to choose how much you're going to emphasize one or the other. And I really didn't learn that and internalize that feeling until I learned to play the tamborim, which is this small circular drum that's played on downstrokes and upstrokes. And I actually just have finished a video that I'm going to share with people or share with the world about kind of my take as a lover of Brazilian music, but not having grown up in Brazil. And the tamborim was the instrument that really sort of forces you to internalize that groove.
Wonderful. Well, speaking of education, we're close to time here, because you do a lot of teaching and a lot of performing whenever possible. If someone wanted to study with you or learn more about you and your music, where could they do that? Is there a website or an email address, or how can people contact you?
Well, I do have a page on, well, I have a Facebook page. I also have a phone number and an email. I do have a website that's that I'm hoping to get updated soon, but you can look up Jeff Bongo Busch, and my last name is Busch, and you could also just write to me on Facebook or something like that. And I have a studio at the Martin Luther King Community Center in Seattle, and there's you know, a lot of great percussion and a piano, and
Are
it's
you
a good
currently
place to
teaching?
hang.
Are you doing students online as well? Teaching students online?
I have
or?
done some online teaching, and I've tended to do more things in the libraries for kids and in the elementary schools, artist in residencies and things like that. But I do love teaching, you know, anybody of any age, really.
Wonderful. Well, Jeff, it's been a pleasure having you here. I look forward to playing some music with you.
Thanks, me too.
We're going to start our live stream here at 5 p.m. A couple brand new compositions written this week, one in honor of our illustrious guest, and a bunch of other songs that we've written over this last year. So stick around. Well, no, stick around. Go do something else. It's 2 hours, for God's sakes. But we'll be back at 5 o'clock right here for the live stream. And if you enjoy these live streams, both the interviews and the performances that we're doing every single week, they're absolutely free. If you enjoy it and you want to support us, you can make a donation either via PayPal or Venmo or mailing a check. All that information is on our the post at the beginning of the post here. And I think also, let's see, coming up later this month, we've got, speaking of Marina Albero will be joining us for one of these, as well as the great Hammond B3 organist and composer Joe Doria. So, and a bunch of other cool stuff's coming up as well. So anyway, stick around, stay tuned, and thank you so much for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Thanks, Kareem.
Thank you.